So what's going on, people? How you doing? Would you like a drink? When you reacted to my thing, that reminded me to turn off those notifications so I don't get interrupted every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Know what I mean? Know what I mean? I think I have more ginger ale in there than I have bourbon. But anyway, so I had a couple things going on. I ran across that clip from Richard Pryor's show. For those of you who don't know, Richard Pryor used to have a variety show, and what's funny is he showcased so many comedians that went on, excuse me, to become a big deal. One was Robin Williams, um, John Witherspoon, Marshall, what's his name, Whitfield, one that played on Night Court, and so forth and so on. And he would have other guests. I guess he started out with Flip Wilson on Flip Wilson's show. Um, Shout out to Flip. A lot of people forget about Flip, but Flip was a major player back in the days. He owned his own show on NBC, and he kind of laid the groundwork for things like The Cosby Show, Different World, so forth and so on. He had the first variety show, similar to Jackie Gleason and some of these guys. And what was so important about it was he owned it. He was not just the producer and director, but he was the owner of the show, which means the money that they made primarily went to him. He put black people behind the cameras, so forth and so on. So um, maybe Geraldine made him do it. And we know it wasn't the devil made him do it. So one of Flip's, and just a throwback for you guys, one of Flip's major characters was him in drag as this woman named Geraldine. Geraldine Jones, I believe her name was. And she had a boyfriend named Killer. She always referred to Killer. Killer won't like this, and Killer this, and Killer that. And and then she would say things like, the devil made me do it. So Flip had a very important show at a very important time. He had people like the Temptations, the Jackson Five, Richard Pryor, Gladys Knight, the Pips. So he had a lot of us, and it was different than the Ed Sullivan show because the type of thing they had more creative control. So yeah, shout out to Flip. And going back to what I was saying about Richard Pryor had a variety show that followed Flip Wilson, and it was kind of in that vein, so to speak. And the piece that I posted on my page the other day told the story. It started off with John Belushi and Richard Pryor playing the alcoholic, and I wanted you people to kind of look beyond the um, humor and get into some of what Maya Angelou was saying because she played the part of this dedicated woman who believed in a man to the hilt. So I just wanted to call attention to that. So I'll kind of touch on that a little later. All right, now I'm just giving a couple people a little time to get here. Um, the other thing I posted this week was um, having to do with health. Now, I've been screaming a long time about this metformin and what have you, so I'm going to talk about it a little later. And I started to post some of the things of how it works and so forth and so on. But I said, rather than get into the pharmacology and all of that nonsense, what I would do is just, um, I know a couple people, but I'll just tell you a little bit about it a little bit later. So, kind of giving you a brief synopsis, if you will, of what I plan on covering tonight. I'm gonna try to keep it short. Um, but as you guys come up, if you pose questions and what have you, as some of you do, I try to address those as well. Because if you come here and share time with me, then I want to address your concerns. So um, with that, it's about 10 past the, oh, 8 past the half. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Mr. Good evening. Welcome to the show. I am Hank Batiste. This is OMITDALOGIC. Before I get started, as I always do, I want to say I'm truly humbled that you guys choose to be here week in, week out, listening to me break some of this stuff down. Um, this illogical stuff that does not make sense. Um, trying to make sense of it, trying to make it understandable to what I call the masses. My education, and it's not putting me up, it's just my education has put me in a place where I've seen this stuff up close and personal. You know, I was blessed enough to really spend time with some of these politicians from Tip O'Neill to Strom Thurmond and some of those guys. Having a chance to meet, you know, heads of state and people that I looked up to, some people I, you know, didn't care for, but, you know, I was professional enough to do my job and just keep it, you know, professional. Um, so I try to use that exposure, try to use that knowledge, try to use that firsthand knowledge to break this down, make it make sense, and kind of give you an idea of where I think some of this is headed when we look at what I call the strategy of this. Again, this is always just the same checkers. So thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Another Thursday night here, this time, this place. Of all the things you could be doing, to be here really does humble me, and I can't say that enough. Tonight, the voices in my head are bewildered, bemused, befuddled, and totally baffled. Why? Um, the government is set to shut down in 2 days. If you've been following any type of politics, you know that most bills start in the House of Representatives, which means this government spending bill, this budget, has to come out the House before it goes to the Senate for approval and then to the president's desk. So think of that schoolhouse rock from back in the day. I am a bill, yes, I'm only a bill. I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. So it's basically the same thing, even though it's not a bill, it's a spending budget for the next fiscal year. Okay, I see you here early. Right on, right on. The government is set to shut down in 2 days, which means folks that get like Social Security, SNAP, EBT, um, Medicare, Medicaid, all these folks are going to be affected. Now, the crazy part about it, if you're in the military, you won't get paid. Congress has no motivation to move their behind because they get paid regardless. Instead of trying to pass a budget, the Trump Republicans are pushing McCarthy to start impeachment proceedings on Joe Biden. Impeachment proceedings on Joe Biden. Let me give me another little drinky drink. The reason this is important is because it's a political ploy to make Biden as damaged as Trump is. It's not to say that he hasn't done anything wrong, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later because I think there's enough to go around. I'm bewildered, I'm bemused, I'm befuddled, and I'm baffled because Senator Bob Menendez, the senior citizen from the state of New Jersey, is under indictment for bribery and aiding the Egyptian government. So he's taking money, he's taking gold bricks. We're not talking about a gold watch or a gold ring. We're talking actually gold bullion. And even got a Mercedes out the deal. He's a Democrat. Now, here's the funny thing about it. Let me give you my caveat. Let me give you my disclaimer. If you do wrong, I feel like your behind should be out there anyway. But there are two different schools of thought. One thing I will say about the Dems, even though they're the last to the table, when a Dem does something wrong, the Dems have a tendency to police themselves and check the person that's doing wrong. The Republicans, on the other hand, they will hold on to their own just to hold on to power. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. I loosely call my show Abuse of Political Power, the Nuclear and Present Danger. If you think of the old Harrison Ford um, thriller, suspense thriller, Clear and Present Danger, was something that threatened the White House. But this is even bigger because this threatens democracy as we know it. It's not just Trump and the Trumpublicans. It's not just the Dems. It's not just Biden and his son. It's Nancy Pelosi and her son and her husband. It's insider trading by people that are in Congress. It's people that feel in like they're above the law and the law doesn't apply to them. So I'm I'm just beside myself, folks. I'm beside myself because Matt Getz is a child molester. He had the audacity, and people just got beyond this. I don't know what happened to the charges that were against him, but he had the audacity to bring X-rated photos of him and these underage girls. So if Jeffrey Epstein was convicted, if R. Kelly was convicted, why the Helena of Troy is Matt Getz still in Congress? So that's the difference between the Republicans and the Dems. So I'm just kind of talking about why I'm so befuddled, why I'm so confused, why I'm so baffled, why I'm so bemused and bewildered. Um, I asked you a couple questions this week, but we're going to try to make sense of this. We're going to try to make sense of it. So my name is Hank Batiste. This is OMITDALOGIC. Let's do this. I'm gonna go off on a tangent. I'm trying to hold it in. I'm trying to maintain my composure. But when I see this much shit that don't make sense, I'm perturbed. Let's do it. First of all, Trump and his New York trial. Trump is they denied his dismissal, they denied his delay, they denied everything. So Trump is going to be going to trial in the state of New York for fraud. Now, the fraud has to do with him exaggerating his properties, saying that they're really worth X amount of dollars when they really aren't. So when he did that, he was able to get loans and this, that, and the other. If you bought a house and you said your income was $100,000, and they come to find out it's $40,000, 9 out of 10 times the outcome is going to be you're going to lose that house because you can't afford to pay the mortgage on it. But someone like Trump, who has all of these disciples who would give their lunch money, their milk money, and the payment on their trailer to keep him in power, he's taken monies from people and bought things. The good thing about this is it's a civil trial. Unlike a criminal trial, in a criminal trial, they'll use terms like beyond a reasonable doubt, preponderance of evidence. They talk about it takes a unanimous decision. With the civil trial, the judge can impose on him financial sanctions, which will force him to have to sell some of the properties. In the state of New York, and depending on how severe said financial sanctions are, he may wind up having to sell, you know. So imagine landing on Park Place, a boardwalk, and only having $60. So now you got to start selling some of those properties. So that's the best analogy I could use to try to make you understand what's happening here. This is probably going to be one of the best things that could happen. In addition to the financial sanctions that can be imposed in a civil trial versus a criminal trial, the prosecutor can call Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, Jared, and everybody at Subway if he wants. Now, they have to take the stand. They can take the Fifth Amendment, that keeps them from incriminating themselves. But when you do that in a civil trial, there's an inference or you can make the argument that the reason this person didn't answer this question is because they're guilty of what they've been accused of. So that's good as well. The last thing that's really good about this that we're going to talk about is if Trump has a Trump moment, one of those despicable, delusional, demagogue moments, and he becomes a little loquacive, a little talkative, and he starts going off, anything he says cannot just be held against him in the civil trial. It can be used against him in the criminal trials going forward. So that's the significance. Stay tuned because these fraud trials start on Monday in New York. I can't wait. When I posted this thing with Richard Pryor and Maya Angelou, I wanted you guys to look beyond it because there's always been double standards. When we look at what a lot of Black men have gone through, and this hits home with me because I always say, people say, oh, you're so smart, you're so this, you're so that. The apple don't fall far from the tree. I came from a father and a grandfather, both maternal and paternal, who had some of the same intelligent quotient, who had some of the same creative ideas. When my dad worked for public service, my dad did everything from laying tracks for the streetcars to power lines. It was like being in the military and other duties, and he didn't get paid extra for that. He didn't get paid like an engineer, but he was doing engineer work. My daddy was blessed in that he was one of the few Black men that worked for the same employer for 33, almost 34 years before he retired. But he was still forced into retirement before he was ready to retire. And I remember vividly the white man who, on one hand, was praising my dad and telling my dad how, they hated to see him go and he had trained everybody and he had did this shit back. You even trained me. But all good things come to an end. And I remember so vivid because my dad, I'm standing there. This man gives this impromptu retirement speech to my dad. And he gives him a little cheap Timex watch. You remember the old ones with that expandable waistline? I mean, wristband. He gave that, and that watch couldn't cost him more than $12 or $15. And my dad was, at the time, I didn't understand it because to my 12, 13-year-old ears, it sounded like this man was praising my dad. And then he said something to the effect, if you weren't black, you could have been a supervisor or foreman, shit, maybe even manager. And my dad was so embarrassed, and I didn't understand it at that point in time. And then I got a little older. And when I went places, and it was obvious that I had this intelligence, it was obvious that I thought out of the box and I had this creative mind. And time after time after time again, I would be told that you don't know your place. So if I was told this in 1979, when I'm 20 years old, imagine what my dad was told in 1939 or 49 or 59 when the last of his children was born. And all he wanted was life, liberty, and the pursuit of a place called property where he could raise his family the way he envisioned, the way he thought, based on the hard work that he did. And I'm blessed. I'm blessed beyond measure. I don't want for anything. And I'm not bragging. I'm saying this because, like my dad, my hard work paid off. But we, as a culture, we as a race, we as a people, we as a unified body, we're only as strong as the weakest link. So what I think about is the brothers, the Ernest Lee. Ernest Lee was a brother of mine. We were Boy Scouts together. Ernest went, his mom died, and I don't know what happened to this boy, but Ernest went from being our size to being, he went from being Bruce Banner to being the Hulk. Then Ernest was playing defensive end. I didn't get that growth spurt. When I graduated high school, I was 143, 145 pounds after eating a bowl of gumbo and a po' boy. But Ernest was like Dexter Manley. Ernest was a football prodigy. And all his life, everybody was telling him how talented he was, and he was socially passed. And I used to tease because he was my boy. I used to tease him about how dumb he was. Kids are cruel, but it's all done in love. You understand what I'm saying? Ernest went to Tennessee State. unlike Dexter Manley, he got a coach who didn't connect with him for whatever reason. And people hear from the project. So next time I see Ernest, he was so big he had two nicknames. We used to call him Mandingo because he looked like a big slave, and we used to call him Bogart. But me and Ernest was like this. When they used to make this pizza for lunch in the cafeteria, Ernest be like, yo, man, I know you ain't gonna eat it. I'm like, man, I ain't eating this shit, man. He said, give it to me. Ernest would have 6 pieces of pizza. One day we got mad and we started a food fight. I don't know if you remember this, Cheryl, in the cafeteria. We throwing food and acting a fool and carrying on. Ernest is literally catching food and sitting there at the table eating. He not having no parts of it. So he was this gentle giant to everybody that was his friend. But he was this imposing thug to people he didn't like. And next time I see Ernest, Ernest is homeless, wandering around the project. And I said, what's up with you, Bogart? Man, you stink. He said, man, leave me alone. I said, well, where you living at? He said, don't worry about it. And my boy said, don't do that, bro. I was like, oh, dang. Hey, man, give me $5. Man, I ain't giving you shit. Get a job. And then I thought about it because he was my boy. And I said, yo, man, look, I work back at the mall, man, selling shoes while I'm going to school. Come on back there, I'll hook you up, I'll get you a job. Man, I said, come on, man, just come on back. I got you, bro. Ernest came, I talked to my manager. And just like my dad used to do, I got him hired. But Ernest he was so broken because everything he had dreamed of was about being in the NFL. He couldn't accept in his mind just being a stock man. Because Ernest didn't have the mouthpiece or the chops to be a salesman. I would talk to women, man, they leave the store with 5 and 6, 7 pairs of shoes, 3 purses and some bows and some hose, pantyhose people. Ernest said, man, you could do that shit because you're a pretty boy, man. Look at you. I was like, yo, stick with me, man. I got you. We boys, man. Ernest didn't come to work. Next time I'm riding through the project, guy stopped me. He said, hey, man, you heard about Bogart? I said, what? He said, yeah, man, he was strong arming people in the dice game. They shot him 4 times, rolled over him, backed up and rolled over him again. And I said, this boy had a death wish. He couldn't kill himself, so he let somebody else. He forced somebody else to kill him. So when I posted this, I wanted us to look beyond the humor because we have so many talented black and brown men, and even poor white men who are not like the Trump disciples. Some of us made it out by, we're blessed enough to go to school somewhere. We're blessed enough to get one of those little community jobs, one of those municipal jobs. Some of them went to work for the fire department, some went to work for the police department, some went in the military. And those are the ones that made it out. But we have so many of us who don't have a father named Donald Trump, who don't have a father named Joe Biden, who don't have a mother named Nancy Pelosi. Look what happened to the mayor in Detroit. Even with all the political connections his mama had, he fell by the wayside. I tell black kids all the time, especially young brothers, I said, white boy can reinvent himself every day. You only get one chance. If you're blessed enough to get a chance to start over, don't waste it. This country has always been afraid of us, our ingenuity, our know-how. When we have a woman that believes in us the way Maya Angelou believed in Richard Pryor in the skit, and she realized she loved the man because she knew who the man was before this systematic racism beat him down and robbed him of his dignity. They always want to talk about opioids. They talk about opioids because this is something that affects rich kids. I posted the question today, and I said, do you know a black man, a brother, a father, a son, a nephew, an uncle who had big dreams and then became broken by a systematic racism? Unemployment, lack of opportunities. Did they resort? Did they? Some of these brothers, if they can't make it the right way, they're gonna make it any way they can. In New Orleans, they say you get it how you live it, which basically means by any means necessary. People seem to forget that before Malcolm was Malcolm X, he was Malcolm Little. He was a pimp. He was a pussy. He was a dope fiend. So with all the things that Islam was, it saved him. And then it took his life. Where's the irony in that? I brought this up simply because instead of Congress working on getting a budget, they're focused on the politics of retaining power at the expense of the American people. Did Biden do something to help his son out? If you saw your son or your daughter on something, wouldn't you try to help them? They've done no more, no less than Pelosi and anybody else. The only reason they're focusing on him is because sadly, we got this old ass man with this spoiled 50 something year old son who's a viable candidate, who at present is the president of the United States. So, our clear and present danger is this rampant abuse of power, political power, for personal gain, for those that share our DNA, in disregard for those of a lesser. The last thing I'm going to talk about, I posted this thing on Metformin, and I'm going to make it real quick. When you see these commercials on TV, you see people dancing and singing, and they got a song to celebrate this drug that's going to change the world. And then you see this little thing in the background where they talk about the whisper almost what the side effects are. Metformin has been given out like Halloween candy. If you've been going to the doctor on a regular basis for the last 5 to 6 to 7 years or more, I promise you, you can remember every time you go up in there. Once it was 140 over 90 was high blood pressure. Then they dropped it to 140 over 80. Now they've got these ridiculous claims. Once it was an A1C over 8. Then it was A1C over 7. Now they're pushing metformin on people with A1Cs in the 6s. They're using terms like, well, you don't have diabetes, but you're pre-diabetic. So I start talking to you like you, my people. I start giving you the same advice that I take for myself. I was 17 years old working at the LSU Medical Center, injecting rabbits, working for a virologist, ironically, injecting rabbits with the herpes simplex virus. I don't know why I was so blessed to have these jobs or this access. Maybe because I had a certain intellectual curiosity. And at that age, you're just totally fearless. So I've learned some things along the way. And one of the things I learned about physiology is that everything that goes in the body comes out the body, but it has to be filtered by either the kidneys or the liver or both. What makes these medicines so bad is they start to affect the proficiency, the efficiency, and the efficacy of the kidneys. So you're supposed to be pre-diabetic. You start taking this thing. You have 10,000 bowel movements. Every time you have a bowel movement, you're moving something out of the body. So now it's gone through the kidneys, left some deposits, because any kind of what we call granulars can form kidney stones. That's stuff that the kidneys couldn't filter and flush. So now some of those same people that started on metformin, now they're doing what? They're on dialysis. Instead of getting better, they've gotten worse. One of my classmates says she has been taking it for a number of years and it's worked for her and this, that, and the other. What I'm gonna tell you what I told the doctor. They said, "Oh, you have a A1C of 6.4. I'm gonna give you this metformin." I said, "Oh no, you will not." Well, what's wrong? Why won't you take it? I take it. I said, "Well, what's your A1C?" It doesn't matter what my A1C is. I take it. I says, "Well, knowing what you know, why would you take it?" Well, you run the risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. I said, let me explain something to you. From the day you were born, you're running a race to die. Some dies a little sooner than others. So you can't scare me into taking the medication with the possibility of having a stroke or a heart attack. Because that's what they do. They pressure you, they intimidate you, they bully you. I- I'm not taking any medicine, people. And you see how I eat. A lot of times when you see me post these meals, those are my splurges. Those are the days that I'm going to treat myself to a little something, something. I don't eat like that every day. I try to fast from about 7 or 8 o'clock at night till about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock the next day. When I wake up, I drink not hot tea, I drink iced tea. I drink about 8 to 10 ounces of the iced tea just to get my digestive juices going. It's something easy my body can digest, and it gives me that sense of fullness. And then somewhere around 11:30, 12 o'clock, I'll fix a meal, or I'll go out. I take myself on a date. Once a week, I go out to eat. Me and the voices in my head. So, folks, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you that this little thing called a smartphone, use it. When the doctor gives you something, say, okay, how do you spell that? And then you can go to Google, or you just say it, metformin, and it comes up. And it tells you everything about the drug. And anything that you don't understand, you talk to the doctor. And you say, well, I'm taking this, and this. How does that interact with this drug? I have these issues. If you're giving me something for my depression, and I look at it and it says it increases the possibility of suicide. So hold up. I just went from being depressed to wanting to kill myself? Think, people. Abuse of power is a mighty bad thing. Doctors are businessmen today. Doctors get paid bonuses for pushing certain drugs. In some ways, they're no different than Pookie and Ray Ray standing on a corner. The only time we hear about it is when it's opioids and it's Becky with the blonde hair, a Todd from Cape Cod who's dying from it. They don't give a shit when it's Loco and Pookie and them shooting each other up. That's all I got for you tonight, folks. Do me a favor before you go to my page, OMITDALOGIC, OMITDALOC. Huh? OMITDALOGIC. I can't even, folks. I get too caught up in this because I care. I care. If you think enough of me to come here week in, week out, I think enough of you to try to give you the most and the best of me representing this that I can. So, go to my YouTube page, OMITDALOGIC. subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I'm putting up new content. Share this with someone. And if you do that for me, I'll see you right here next week. Same Baptiste time, same Baptiste place. And remember, this game called life, nobody leaves alive. So don't be intimidated. Don't be frightened. Don't be coerced. Don't be bullied into doing something that may be the detriment of your overall health. Do the things that I ask you to do. Change your lifestyle. Find a way to work. Exercise. 30 minutes a day, twice a day. You could do a stationary bike or you could walk up and down the street. 10 to 20 minutes before you know you're doing it in 30 minutes. You do it twice a day. Because remember when we were kids, we moved all day long. If you do that, you increase your mobility. Find an exercise program. You start off walking, that's the best exercise. Now your lungs are working more proficient, your heart is healthier. That's going to bring your blood pressure down. You can get off those pills. Eat what you like in moderation. When you look at my plate, don't think I eat like that every day, because I don't. And more importantly, take care of yourselves and each other.